When I talk about Bernie here, I do want to say I don't like it when anyone comes out right after a loss and tries to claim that their own pet political issue is the number one reason someone lost. It's clear many voters were subjected to too much disinformation and misinformation. The right wing propaganda machine is the most complex and powerful it's ever been in human history. And there's huge hurdles to face. But I want to make sure I take everyone's perspectives and try to take the best messaging advice from everyone because we want to make sure our messaging is really tight and on point. So that's going to be my goal with this channel, but here's my first reactions to what Bernie said about Kamala's loss. If you find anything I say insightful or useful, or if you like my approach at all, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. Even if you don't, we want to have more conversations. Please join that conversation. We need to be a part of what's happening right now. We cannot afford to wait. It should come as no great surprise that a Democratic Party which has abandoned working class people would find the working class has abandoned them. First, it was the white working class, and now it is Latino and black workers as well. That's a little bit weird to me. And Bernie's been criticized in the past for abandoning other demographic groups, and I feel like he's kind of admitting here that his politics was based around the white working class. If he's going to say first it was the white working class and now they abandon Latino and black workers as well. While the Democratic Party leadership defends the status quo, the American people are angry and want change, and they're right. And that's really interesting as well, considering Joe Biden's presidency was very FDR-like. So if we talked about the New Deal, Biden did triple American manufacturing. We spent tons on infrastructure, on building green energy, new jobs, wages for the working class rose more during Biden's presidency than any other presidency since FDR, I'm pretty sure. The middle class and the lower class benefited a lot from Biden's presidency. In fact, I would argue that Joe Biden's entire model was based off of a New Deal mentality of proving to people that government can do good things and proving to people that government can serve the working class. And that's one reason real wages have done so well in comparison to inflation. So yeah, Bernie says, now you're abandoning the Latino and black workers as well. What did the Democratic Party do to uniquely abandon Latino and black workers? So you can either look at this as a statement about actual material and actual values. For example, this policy affected these people. But I do want to open up my mind and everyone else's minds, especially if you're not a progressive, to the idea where we just had an election where Joe Biden's policy was phenomenal. So from a liberal perspective, you would say, hey, this policy was great. There were huge gains in these different categories and with these demographics. But people don't believe the economy's good because there was a different prevailing narrative that Trump was able to sell to people. You can either say, hey, Bernie, the Democratic Party is for the working class, or you can think about FDR and FDR's rhetoric and imagine for a second, it's not just about the policy they have done in the party. It's about the narrative building the party has done. So when Bernie repeats this, I feel like Bernie's giving a lesson to the Democratic Party on what it sounds like to be principled and have a consistent narrative and how it sounds if you truly believe in something and how you convince people that you believe in something. It's wild that Elon Musk and Donald Trump have been able to be cosplay working class successfully, but the Democratic Party, who's actually doing policies to help the working class, seems so elitist. And that's probably because Democratic strategists all were pushing like Kamala in different directions. They didn't let her go against billionaires too much. They stopped her from talking about like the price gouging that much. They made her do a more Liz Cheney centric campaign, which I'm not fully against, but expanding Medicare to cover at-home costs was really good. They didn't talk about it enough and the media didn't cover it. And the overall narrative wasn't very consistent. That's what matters right now. Policy did not matter for this election. All that mattered was that people believed a certain narrative. And if Americans believe they're doing bad, they're going to feel bad about it. And they're going to feel bad about whoever's in charge. And when you're anti-incumbency, you need to separate yourself from that incumbent president, which is Joe Biden. And if you're going to swap out Joe Biden for another candidate right before the election, you should have probably picked someone. I know we didn't have much time, but you probably should have picked someone who can actually stand against that incumbent and offer real deviation if it's going to be an anti-incumbency election. There's a chance Democrats could have ran anyone. And Donald Trump was trying to lose the election. Donald Trump ran one of the worst campaigns in American history. Donald Trump ran on zero policies, but he still won. So there's a chance any Democrat would have lost. But still, if you're going to do good policies in government, you're not going to get rewarded just for the good policies. You need to pound it home with good messaging and have a narrative, have a reason why you're doing it, have a fight. Just like FDR, although there were some problematic parts of FDR's New Deal, which you could also say about some policies that progressives have done to build infrastructure, because FDR played with the Dixiecrats a lot, for example. So in terms of racism, FDR was not always the best, you know. But FDR did have a narrative. He did know exactly what to speak about at what moment. FDR was a progressive liberal, but he spoke like a populist when he needed to speak like a populist to make sure he could maintain political power. And that was very beneficial. But Bernie continues, today, while the very rich are doing phenomenally well, 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and we have more income and wealth inequality than ever before. That would have been a good narrative against Elon Musk and Donald Trump, but the Harris campaign did not pound that home. The richest people in the world buying the White House, and the Harris campaign did not pound that home. They focused on messaging the voters did not care about, like January 6th and Trump being a fascist. Voters did not vote on that at all. Unbelievably, real inflation accounted for weekly wages for the average American worker are lower now than they were 50 years ago. That probably is true. Although weekly wages, inflation accounted, wages are probably lower than they were 50 years ago. That is before, like, Ronald Reagan, for example. Reagan is one of the reasons wages went down so much. His presidency, Ronald Reagan's presidency, is one of the reasons for that. So that's probably true. But wages are a lot higher now under Biden than they were under Obama and under Trump and under Bush. So he's true. That is true right there. Today, despite an explosion in technology and worker productivity, many young people will have a worse standard of living than their parents, and many of them worry that artificial intelligence and robotics will make a bad situation even worse. And yeah, with Donald Trump being in charge and no regulations being passed at all, artificial intelligence and robotics are going to go crazy in the next 4 years, which is probably the last thing we needed. We did not need that. That is the opposite direction we should be going in. Today, despite spending far more per capita than any other countries, we remain the only wealthy nation not to do healthcare for all. And it's not even about just doing these things. Like I said, it's about the narrative building. It's about showing people you believe in something. People want to believe in something. And we shouldn't give up narratives to these neo-fascists and neo-technocrats, autocrats, whatever word you want to use. We shouldn't give up power and the narrative to them, because the Democratic Party is to split. Are you going to be the responsible liberal party? Or are you going to be the populist party? Or are you going to be the good policy party, like a New Deal style? All right, well, what are you going to do? You have to have a reason, and like you have to have a method to your messaging if you're a party. And the Democratic Party did not do that. Narratives mattered this election. Narratives are all that mattered this election. And that's going to continue being a thing. That's how a reality TV star like Donald Trump can win the presidency after passing no policy, having no vision for America, doing nothing but just yelling and crying nonstop, crying about everything, crying about literally everything to a pathetic point. This reality TV star is able to create an alternative reality for voters to vote off of. But Bernie says, will the big money interest and well-paid consultants who control the Democratic Party learn any real lessons from this disastrous campaign? Will they understand the pain and political alienation that tens of millions of Americans are experiencing? Do they have any ideas as to how we can take on the increasingly powerful oligarchy which has so much economic and political power? Probably not. So Bernie is... I read this at first and thought, why is Bernie coming out to say this? It's probably self-serving as well. Bernie's probably mad, again, that the party abandoned his form of politics. But Bernie knows how to create a narrative. That's why Bernie was successful in his limited runs for president with only small dollar donations. There is a method to why populism works. And FDR is a good model for how to reject fascism and authoritarianism. So I think we can learn from this in a way. Just if you're a seasoned politician and you're running against Republicans, you need to set a narrative. You need to at least show that you believe in something. Because although Biden did pass the policy to, help people, Biden got the policy done. But he did not successfully pound home that narrative. He did not have good slogans. He did not have good branding. And that is ultimately what mattered the most. Most Americans are not policy junkies. They don't even know what policies are. Trump voters are just now Googling what a tariff is, and they probably still don't know what it means. So yeah, Trump had people run an amazing campaign for him. Even Russia was pitching in. Well, that's the thing, too. When you're fighting a propaganda war and they're sending propaganda through text message, pretending to be Kamala Harris, pretending to be the opposing candidate, and they have individual information profiles of every person, and they know exactly how to get you to not vote or to vote for Trump, they can just pound that propaganda in your phone. No number of door knockers is going to be able to heal that issue. You can knock on every door in America, but if they go back on their phone and see a completely different narrative, they are gonna like bypass that human conversation and bypass that human experience and go right to what they see on their phone. And if you don't have someone speaking in a authoritative manner, so like when Kamala goes on The View and she's like, well, I don't know if I do anything different from Biden. Even if you don't do anything different from Biden, you have to understand politics. It's about influence. It's about giving these answers that people want to hear. Like Donald Trump just says what people want to hear. That's all he does. He doesn't have a real position for anything. It's just say what people want to hear. Say what you think people want to hear. What people do you need to get power? Say what they want to hear. That's all you need to know. So in those calculations, Kamala and Biden have been amazing with policy and actual governing and governance. So like actually governing our country, but they have been terrible when it comes to messaging and overall performance politically. And politically is a completely different conversation.